One item not on the agenda is we, with my ascension to chair, we're left without a vice chair. So thought we'd mention at this meeting. At our next meeting, we'll go ahead and take a vote. So if you're interested in being vice chair, think about it and let me know between now and our next meeting. With that, turn it over to Paul to
All right.
report.
So you have the report in front of you, our bond program status report, and I'm going to have Sherry run through this as well. So I know the committee is not met for the summer, so we sent you the link with all the past reports. And a lot of things happened over the summer, but as far as the financial well-being of the program, very stable as well. So I think good news report, and I'll let Sherry run through this.
Thank you, Paul. So yes, there is not a lot to report, which is a good thing when we're talking about budget. You can see that our program reserve and project contingencies graph continues to maintain its stable $49.2 million for program reserve and $72.6 million for the reserve plus project contingencies. If you looked at the link that we provided that had the past month's data, you can see that not much has really changed, but each one of those incremental changes can be seen. This is a pretty large, $80 million y-axis, so those incremental changes can be seen by going back to our past reports. The map, you'll see, we finished out with only Aloha High School in yellow, and the reason for that was its project delay, which we can chat about a little bit more in the next pages. But this map will soon be replaced by what we have planned in the coming year. So this will be the last time you'll see this specific summer 2017 map. Moving on to the overall performance scorecard. No changes to report in any of the colored indicators. We note there in the narrative comments that the 3 large school projects are currently in closeout and punch lists are nearing completion. The project budgets remain healthy. Of note, on our next year's projects, Five Oaks renovation, we just awarded the CMGC contract to Kirby Neighborhood, so we'll be working with them on the Five Oaks renovation. You can see also there our equity school board aspirational goal of 10%, consultants, contractors, and apprenticeship. We have a slight increase on consultants, no change for contractors, and a slight decrease on the apprenticeship. Still remain very healthy. The graph is later, of course, in the packet. On the budget perspective, no changes to report there. On the grand scheme, enough to change the color, but the specific changes, again, we'll go through when we get to the financials. The largest change that we had is a decrease of the contingency in Mountainside High School due to transportation site development charges of $594,000, which were assessed there. And then the other item to note is that, as I mentioned, Kirby Neighborhood's now on board at Five Oaks, and they are going to be performing a cost reconciliation sometime in October. And then finally, from the schedule perspective, this is the one sheet that we do have some changes to report, and that would be that we have land use approval on the William Walker K-5 replacement, so really good news there. And then we also, you notice there on the Five Oaks renovation, have noted that the prime contract has actually been awarded.
Best package the planning commission said they were received. They have nothing to say, so I think it was on the 3rd try we got it right.
All right. Any questions?
I'll just say, too, while we're showing Aloha High School Title IX is red, this is the end of September report. So we're actually into just punch list now. We punched that out last week. And so we're finalizing that project as well.
Yes, the school is very, very satisfied with that space. We completed there both the Aloha High School Title IX project, the expansion of the community locker room. Also, concurrently, we expanded their career technical education program. not a bond program that was funded by the Measure 98 funds, but our staff basically provided all of the project management for that project. So it's a very, very successful project. The staff there was just amazing. The Aloha High School Title IX, as you guys know, drifted into October because of the slab conditions we found there, and then furthermore found the sewer issues there. They were just unbelievably excited about their project and really worked with us. It was a big inconvenience for them. They had sports programs that had to be taken, porta potties had to be brought in, but they worked with us incredibly well. We knew about the problems early enough that enough issues could be solved, and creatively solved, but we're still incredibly flexible and very understanding with us. The kids still got in the first day of school, but they had a little bit longer to wait for their locker rooms. So.
Sure.
It was actually the first day that they used them for classes.
One quick question, like on the mountainside, you had to transport like 500,000 or so. How come that wasn't like in the regular budget? It was more out of contingency budget.
Do you want to address that, Steve?
So I'm sorry, I was just asking an Aloha school teacher how the locker room was like. We reported awesome. So.
Excellent.
Yeah, I was questioning like the mountainside looked like there's like $500,000 from contingency versus planned project. So why was it? Was it a surprise that this transport stuff was more or less, or?
No, it's not a surprise. This was an amount that we had budgeted for, but what happened was during the permitting process, some of the money, about 500,000 of it, went from being parked into paying the transportation impact fee, and it was moved over to paying some other agency fees, whether it was application fees or other impact fees. Leslie Imes talked about that when we were in a meeting not too long ago before Dick retired, and I don't know what the exact use of the money was, but it was going from an agency pot to an agency pot.
So it was budgeted for, but the permit fees were higher than expected.
Yeah, substantially. I was going to say.
So
You were on the right track.
So it's a surprise. It's a little more than you thought it was. It was X amount, twice.
$500,000 surprise.
Yeah.
Well, and it's that combination of there's the Transportation Development Tax, then there is the Transportation Site Development Charge, which is different because it was all about the South Cooper Mountain development area. And so there's credits and charges happening all at the same time, and there's just a lot of hydraulics about how much each one of those are, and when they net out, that's where we ended up.
Sherry, I have a question on that. When you're figuring the contingency, and projects haven't been completed, are you still going in and figuring a part of that contingency that's probably not going to be used? Or once the project is completely finished, then that's when you actually move that contingency into the whole reserve?
That's correct, right. We have a certain project contingency.
So there could be some more additional.
Right. Yeah.
That fund could, as soon as projects are
Like the middle school.
Right. We're not there on Mountainside yet to move that.
Right.
Close that thing.
Yeah. Gotcha.
But from the timing sake, that's 3 months, 6 months, a year. What is your
Timberland's
right now about what you think? I mean, it's not tomorrow. I mean, it's not one day.
Right. So I would say it's incredibly project dependent. And one of the reasons why, for example, I can tell you it's going to be not until next summer at the high school is because there is a problem with the roof there. So it was found as the roof was being installed shortly after we started to see bubbling. And did we tell you guys this? Okay. So we've been talking about it for so many months that it seems like that we talk about this all the time. But there was bubbling. The contractor said, that's kind of normal. Let's see what happens as the weather changes. But it could be absolutely a sign of a problem. So sure enough, it was a sign of a problem. And the bottom line is they are going to re-roof pretty large sections of that school, but of course they need to wait until the summer to do so. So we are remaining under contract with Hoffman. We're not allowing them to close out their contract so that we won't be dealing with a third party or anything. We are still going to be with Hoffman through next summer as they complete the re-roofing, at which time then we will allow the project to close and we'll know what our budget will look like. Now, we're not covering the roofing.
Right.
But it would be premature to close out the project prior to that happening.
Would it be fair to say that a good project closing out at least 6 months and then a difficult project a year plus?
I would say so, yeah.
So the community understands that one depends on-
Right. Yeah, it's always not as good as you'd like it to be. Again, the smaller projects we close out within 3 months, 2 months, but that's a very good estimate.
Yeah, 10 months goes there. 2 seconds.
And then the follow-up on the low, it went from 2 to about 6.6, is that, we'll get close, I mean, that's stuff. It seemed scary there for a while, but.
It did, you're absolutely right.
Wasn't that because the sewer collapsed? The sewer had collapsed back there. Unfortunately, we found it when everything was torn up. Would have been a nightmare for us to finish this project and then discover.
Right. The slab was also a big problem. We had to actually excavate the entire slab, and we had planned on using that slab and just finishing it similar to a polished concrete surface, but the material that was found underneath there was not suitable for that. All right, you'll see the graphs of our equity performance. The aspirational goal there, 10% in the green. We are tracking very well with our contractors. Contract values, the consultants are inching their way up. And then you'll see our apprenticeship participation is almost, well, right at double, finally. For the aspirational goal of 10%, we are now at 20%. All right, moving on to our overall program cost forecast and available funding. There is no change to report. Moving on to page 10, where we start the actual financial summary, where we show our contingencies as they are tracking. So again, on page 10, you can see that the Mountainside High School there shows a decrease in the contingency of $480,000. Also of note on page 11, at VOS, we've got a contingency $87,000 in September for overtime, additional road work there in Denny Road, and then other jurisdictional requirements that we're not seeing. And then several of our other projects had $10,000 and $20,000 contingency utilizations, and all of those add up to a $637,000 program contingency use.
The free contingency availability, 0.7, that's how much is left? Is that correct on impulse data, or is that, am I reading this?
Oh, yes, yeah, so there's 223,000, 0.7%.
And so you're feeling okay because you're close?
Yeah, work is substantially complete.
So you don't have any other hidden surprises? Correct.
And we think we know about all of the claims or anything that could be out there.
Right, and then Cooper, you're at 0.2, are you okay there? On page 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, where are we at on the land purchase, Steve? I mean, we feel good about that.
Oh, yeah, no, it's good.
That's already negotiated.
Yeah.
Right.
Nothing else.
Okay.
So we can point that out.
7.8 is the final number.
Not exactly. What we had done is it was $675 an acre. It's 11.23 acres plus 1.6 million in TDT credits, and we asked the board for a little bit more. So I think it was like $7.5 million, and then we asked for a little bit more for closing costs, our attorney fees, those kind of soft costs. In fact, we're going to be out there tomorrow talking about how to recycle the building materials, and we can make some money off of it.
And then for this, and then you're again tight, excuse me, for, my eyes. Yes, but Timberline is pretty, you're down there on contingency there.
been done for years.
It's
been open 2 years.
Bring it home.
We do. No,
Transfer.
thanks for asking.
When do you bring Timberland across? I mean, it's been open for a couple of years.
Pardon?
When do you bring Timberland from like a contingency back to a reserve since it's been open?
That's a good question. I'll answer that. So if you recall, we did the solar panel system on the roof afterwards. So that just finished a couple months ago. So that the remaining contingency was wrapped up in the completion of that work because it was very expensive. So as we start to close it out now, it'll come over pretty soon.
Okay.
So Aaron, does that include the ball field as well?
That was part of the work that they're finishing.
Okay.
Cool.
Good questions. Any others? All right, page 12 has not changed.
I just want to note that page 12 is a possibility of an addition on here. With the high school project, we had a little over $2 million in transportation development tax, TDT, credited to the high school project. As I mentioned earlier, 1.6 of that has been included as part of the deal for acquiring the elementary school, future elementary school site. That means we have a little over 400,000 of TDT vouchers that we can sell, and this will be new because it's pretty rare that you can sell them because there's a really limited area in which they could be applied. But because this is greenfield development out there, everybody's going to be looking for it now. The development that's going on the east side of the street is a prime candidate to, perhaps look to acquire. And the thing is, you buy it on pennies on the dollar. So, if we've got I think we have $454,000 in credits. So, perhaps we can sell it for, 60, maybe 70 cents on the dollar.
$250,000 or something.
Right.
Perfect.
Which is better than a stick to the eye.
And then Sherry, do you even include the estimated funding that maybe we're going to get from the state grant for FF&E for when classroom space that's not even in here, so that'll be
We took it out. We weren't sure. Last time we did it, we hadn't heard if they're going to renew it or not.
Yeah. Okay.
Good question, though. We used to actually carry it on that summary sheet, but we've taken it off.
Okay. The good news is, if any of those grants do come forward and we're recipients of them, that will just simply
And I think they're going to be there. They are there. They didn't take. We thought maybe the legislature would take it away with the bond program.
Excellent.
Good.
That's good news.
I can't make it done.
All right, again, page 13, didn't change, nor did, I'm sorry, page 12, page 13, 14 as well, nothing of note there. Page 15, the security upgrades. This one changed several months ago, but I don't know that we have spoken with you about what we are attempting to show here. So we have spoken about the fact that the security upgrades budget is $10.6 million. So you'll recall that in the original bond, $10 million was chosen to be the fixed budget that would be applied to security upgrades district-wide. Didn't know what this would be at the time, but a $10 million budget was chosen. As we realized how much we were impacting ADA, how it would be very efficient for us to actually do the ADA buttons at the same time. We added $600,000 from the ADA line item in the budget, transferred it over to the security projects budget. What we are currently in process of, you'll see group 2B schools there. We are 95% complete with that summer of 2017 work. And the important thing to look at here on this chart is the subtotal currently under contract is $6.4 million. So that is what we currently have encumbered, $6.4 million on this project. If you see the 2015, 2016, 2017, we have now done 3 years of security projects district-wide. Each one of those years, we've seen very different results based on lessons learned, kind of some other issues of technology changes. That's completely changed the way we had anticipated carrying out these projects. We had buttons designed when in actuality now we're using phones. So there have been a lot of changes for the good because our security systems are much more robust than they would have been when we knew what we knew in 2015 and were installing back then. One struggle that we had in 2016 was with a low bid contractor that was very difficult to work with. We were trying to implement 9 schools projects over the summer and had an awful time with that. What we decided to do in 2017 was take a CMGC approach to have a much more hands-on contractor that we could rely more on to get the work done, to get the good subcontractors contracted with that CMGC prime. That went fairly well, but you'll see we paid a large price for that. What we would like to do moving forward, and what we are moving forward with in 2018, is another alternate procurement method, which is the design build. Because frankly, what we have discovered is that our architect, who has been with us on 15, 16, and 17, they really aren't the best person to be doing what they're doing, because actually our own staff are much more savvy in what, number one, our schools need, but even in the technology that we utilize. And we're very fortunate that one of our project coordinators on the bond staff was actually an installer in his earlier life of security systems, and he's very knowledgeable and has been able to, and he came on in 2016, and so as he has become more part of our project staff, plus just others in our district have become more knowledgeable in what we're doing, how we're doing it, we think the design build approach will give us a much better product, because we will have more than likely the security companies will be the prime, and the architect will be subbed to them to do the minor modification needed for vestibule creation and that kind of thing. So we're anticipating that we will have a much better product, not only just with coordination, but we're hoping and thinking that the price will come down. Now, what we've shown you here in our estimations, the estimate to complete for 2018 and 2019, those numbers are taken based on the bid results that we received for this summer's work under CMGC. So they are probably very high, but we wanted to get them out there because that's the latest. If we were to continue on what we did in 2017 summer, this is what we are likely to see. These have also had escalation applied through the appropriate completion year. We are hoping these numbers come down significantly in our 2018 and 2019 years as we're implementing in this different fashion. So the design build, alternate procurement will be going to the board, and we'll move forward with getting out on the street with an RFP, and we're pretty confident that this is going to be the way to go for the rest of these perimeter hardening upgrades throughout the district. We also have been given a charge by Carl and others to get these done a lot more quickly than we had anticipated. The reason for that is, there are so many reasons for that, but one is that we really want to get our whole district on key card access at the front doors and all entry doors. Getting these projects done more quickly will allow us to do this. What has been kind of the give and take in that is that there's been an agreement that occupied construction is okay. And there should be a way to work on the schools in a way that will not disrupt class will do the most invasive construction during the summer. But then all of the wiring, all of the other more kind of behind the scenes work can be done throughout the school year. We won't turn systems on until we have them fully commissioned. And so we'll go from operating as we are currently at the schools without security projects to full on. They go on when we commission them and they work from there forward. I don't know if some of you maybe heard what happened in 2015 and 16. Just a lot of bumps and starts. They would turn on the system, wouldn't work real well, and that puts our kids in danger because if the system isn't working how we designed it, number one, but more importantly, how our occupants are understanding that the systems work, they won't be secure. So changing a lot about what we've learned in the last couple of years about how we'll move forward with the security upgrades. But we did want to show you that kind of scary $13.6 million estimate. But again, we are very conservative. We think it's going to come in lower. Hopefully we'll know more when we go out to bid for the remaining work, and we'll see some improvement there, not only in its cost, but just in how it's implemented.
How were the various groupings decided for the?
Good question. For the most part, the group 1 schools were the ones that were the most simple to implement. So just a door, some doors here and there. They were schools that already had, didn't need a vestibule created. So that's what has been these group 2 schools are the ones that require quite a bit more work to be done, creating vestibules. The high schools are in these last groups. We've done some studies with the occupants, and really, if you guys are familiar with our high schools, it would be millions of dollars to be able to get this same vestibule kind of philosophy installed at all of our schools. And honestly, our high schools are just too active of a campus for that to even be feasible operational. It wouldn't be worth any of the money that would be spent to try to make that work. And so what we've discovered is the solutions that we're going to employ there, although at first blush seemed those are going to be the really high price tag, they're not going to be because of the philosophy we're now employing, which is more about more card key access points and very well programmed card key access. So passing times, a lot of different kind of operations that the schools hopefully will employ as these get installed. The biggest thing that we're hoping to provide for them is the ability to quickly secure their building in a lockdown or a lockout, which is not the case right now. Right now, custodians run to the outer doors that have the panic hardware and literally dog them down by hand, which takes a while to get all the way around the schools. What this will allow us to do is immediately go into lockdown with the push of the button on the phone. And so that'll allow basically human error, for the most part, to be gone from that scenario. Now the entries into the schools, they won't have what you have here with a vestibule being able to buzz people in. But honestly, the thought of that with high school kids arriving at different times of the day, after hours programs, it wasn't going to provide what we needed. They did not need that.
Question for you, the key card concept that you're talking about for high schools, that's staffing.
That is correct. Correct. Though we did talk about that. We talked about what if we provided the students with key card access, because we have issues with portables. We have kids that go out to portables for classrooms, and so we talked about that possibility. But if you 2,200 kids, key cards, and unfortunately we've had to realize that a lot of the evil that's done at these kind of shooter incidences, they're students, and so they would have had a card key to get in. So really trying to be realistic about what we're trying to protect our students from, and we really want to be honest with our community about how much we can promise that we can keep their kids safe. So our public safety office, we're working very closely with them to really increase awareness about the messaging and the education about students to keep an eye out for each other. And of course, that has nothing to do with facilities, but we always find ourselves in those conversations because we're the ones that start asking about, we need to build this, what do you want? And that really gets these questions going about, well, what do we really want? So a lot of great work being done right now in our public safety department around, again, the education of our students and our staff and our public, just knowing what to expect and knowing what we can reasonably assure ourselves of the protection that we're providing our students.
So ultimately, Tom, this is not just for high schools, this would be all 54 of our schools. It would be on key cards.
Right.
So right now, our practice is, and it's building dependent, principals have the latitude to issue master keys out to staff. And so I can tell you at Sunset there are well over 300 masters floating out there in the community. It's a broken system, and probably 500 floating out there at Beaverton.
Right.
Because you can take them to Ace Hardware and they get copied. Even though they say do not duplicate, they're duplicated left and right. So we want to get out of the business of issuing keys other than to a very small group of people. So for example, at Mountainside, as large as that school is, we only issued 17 keys. It's our custodial staff, our administration, and campus security. Beyond that, everybody else who needs to get in can get in via their key card. So it's limiting the number of people that we need to actually issue an actual key to. Right. And we can actually shut a building down at any point in time with key cards. And, so that we can, let's say they lose it, it takes us seconds to deactivate. You lose a key, who knows? And often their keys are attached to their badge. So then you find out, oh yeah, they're at Southridge High School, and here's their key. And, they go hand in hand. So just increases security overall.
And also the ability to track who's in the building when they've been accessed after hours as well, to have that record.
Right. It's a good step forward. I do think it's a good conversation to have with the community about what the philosophy is behind the decision making and being able to have a conversation about what risks we're choosing to protect against and which risks we're choosing not to protect against. It's a difficult conversation, but it's important.
Right.
They're difficult conversations, and Sherry said it here, and it's not one that we say often out there in our community, is parents don't want to hear about the fact that it's more often than not a student that attends that school,
right,
who already knows how to gain access to the facility. So they always think it's somebody from outside entirely. That's not been the history of this nation. So how do we just take precautions, such as the phones? I mean, that was a huge plus for us. And then any staff member in the building who has a phone in their classroom or their workspace can put the building into lockdown. Any staff member. For that matter, the first year, any student could too.
I was laughing because
Yeah.
I had a middle schooler installer who he didn't actually do it himself.
That's okay.
Yeah.
He was in the office when it happened.
Sure.
And it's,
Go ahead.
sorry, it's also a difficult discussion with the public because we it's risk management, it's not risk elimination.
Exactly.
And that's something I think we have to be open and transparent about as well. There's only so much you can do
That's right.
without making it a prison. Right?
That's right.
And the other thing is we have to be careful what we share exactly because we don't want to make it very known to the public exactly everything we're doing.
Right.
So
Which is a good point. So we talked about the hardened desk down below and the glass as well. So that's information we're not sharing with the general public just for that safety factor as well.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
I'm sorry, on the procurement process, you kind of seeking design build, and I want to make two comments. One, who wrote the performance spec for that? Was that internal so that you can get apples to apples on the hardware? For the RFP for the design build, you have to provide some standard of quality, right?
Yeah, we're writing that intro.
Yeah, so you guys are going to do that, and that's on the hardware, and making sure you get all the similar level of features that you have. Because when you do design, build, someone substituting cheaper. So that's when you have the quality staff to do that. The second question is the platform. The security platform resides with some vendor or someplace. And the question is if they are the only ones bidding because they're the only one that provides the software platform. The hardware and everything can be, you can have multiple vendors bid it as software providers, but how are you addressing that issue? Because I assume you have a preferred software vendor for the badging and the equipment?
Right, we do use the Linnell system, and
Are you gonna be able to get competitive bidding if everyone thinks that they're gonna be still doing the software? Are you contracting directly with that software provider?
there are multiple people who are available to bid that same software.
Okay, and there's different installers or the softwares to do that? Okay.
Yeah, there's not many, but there are.
Yeah.
Right, that's gonna limit your crowd. Yeah,
Right.
okay, so, yeah, that, I think that, you can bid the hardware as a design build and get everything punched down, and then you have a software vendor issue that is not necessarily the easiest way to procure it cost effectively.
Right.
That's what happened first.
Yeah, and we actually have the Linnell system is a brand name call out,
Right.
which limits, of course, the folks who can bid, but it doesn't eliminate, because there are several. But you're right.
Yeah, because then you're only getting one bidder, and that's not gonna, it doesn't matter whether you have design build, CMGC, or hard bid, you're gonna have a number that you want to be able to take advantage of.
Right, right.
Yeah, the hardware installation, wiring, getting everything hooked up to the doors, I think that's a great idea because of all the different nuances of every door.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's a complicated project. As much as you would think it's just simple hardware, and it's just, you can do everything wrong. I mean, there's interior, exterior, left and right, the hinges are left and right, and they get them wrong all the time.
All of the
Fire,
Yeah, it is so.
Correctional.
We have just been really, really frustrated with even the consultants that we hire. Our own staff is going over the drawings saying these are completely wrong. And there's a real interesting dynamic that happens with, so the hardware vendor supplies a person that can kind of help you, but they're not contracted with you. And so you're not paying someone to be accurate. We've had some very interesting conversations with our consultants about the level of inaccuracy that we're seeing.
This is really one of those projects that lends itself to a design build. I mean, first off, you're right. You have to have a good basis of design to get what you want out there as well. But it's one of those ones where I think in the past, if you go to an engineering architect firm to design this, they're going to over-design. Your expert out there is the installation companies that will drive and own the designer, and we should get a much better price and more trimmed down, streamlined to what we need. Vice what a designer works on as well. So it's a great fit to pursue that method.
Good conversation. So page 16 outlines our learning technology classroom systems and critical equipment purchases. And Claire is not here to join us tonight, but we could answer more than likely questions that you have, Carl specifically.
See, page 17.
All right, page 19, the cash flow still continues to look really good there. And then in my opinion, the most fun pages are the construction updates, which I apologize they did not print like you see them in your electronic copy. You saw that they print nicely.
I'm sorry, I did want to ask you a question on this.
Yeah.
So, could you, with apologies to the committee, could you explain the lines briefly? I think my read on this is that we're 75-80%.
So this is the tool, this is the tool that Claire uses to plot what individual bonds are.
Right.
So yes, you're correct.
Okay. And the bond, the way to read the vertical green line, or the horizontal green line is that all the bond sales are complete?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. And so that you can take away from that there would be no additional impact on the school district if interest rates change. Is that right?
Correct. We've sold all our bonds, and so we've actually received
At a premium.
Okay.
we've received our premiums on those too.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Those were all my questions. Thanks.
What was our last premium?
It was 37 million.
33 million
Yeah.
premium. So it's the first time I believe it was 49. So it was huge. No, it was higher.
60 something.
63. Yeah.
Save the
Yeah,
project.
So-
63.2 was the
It's almost
first, the
100
second was 30.2.
Yeah. It was an enormous gain for us.
Thank you.
All right, so Hazeldale construction update is the one that we'll see from here forward, because it is the only new construction site we have this year moving forward. But we also wanted to give you just copies of the August updates, which had Sato, Mountainside, and Vos, the final construction updates there. Just some really great conclusion there on all of those projects. It was a pretty exciting August and an even better September, as every child got to come to school on September 5th.
And then not play outside for a week because it was small.
That was very disappointing, yes.
That was, you're the one that.
I know, I was the fun killer that week.
How are these construction updates used? Are these things? That
Yeah, that's part of the communication strategy. So they are housed on the website, but we publish them in our BSD briefs. We've got a number. You'll see the communications community involvement update.
Okay.
So it lays out some of our strategies, social media. So it's pretty active. It's really interesting to watch.
Have you as a committee considered adding any of the cost information to the construction updates?
I can't say that we have. It's the report. We've just always seen it as a whole, and it's posted that way on our website. But I mean, that could be something we consider.
Yeah, I'd throw it out there for discussion about it. It's useful to put out that information about the specific project.
The budget and maybe to actuals or where we are with the projects.
Just for that part of the project. Do other people have thoughts on it?
What budget number do you pick? Like for Mountainside, we put the
Original.
Or do we put the final budget and then get accused of hiding the fact that the budget changed?
Well, I think that is part of the question. Especially if the Hazeldale is the one that's going to be updated for the future.
Well, Mountainside, Maureen, help me if I'm off on this, but you made some communications that went public.
During the time that we were continuing to see price escalation, cost escalations.
Escalations. They put together information that did go out to the public, and it had the original budget. And
right, exactly.
And it is posted on the website too. But we don't revisit it constantly, but I mean, it's.
I wonder if having the learnings from those times, if it's valuable to put that information in future updates on active projects like Hazeldale.
It might be worthwhile. I would be leery, for example, Mountainside seems to be the stickler, I'll be honest. I mean, because of how large the budget was. If you simply put the dollar amount there without having an understanding, we'd fill the backside with all the other factors that led to that. Right. So I think they have to go hand in hand because it then becomes a document forevermore, and all you see is the price on the front with a couple of pictures without what the caveats are. You know, how much dirt need to be removed from that site, the other factors, implications that were put in place by agencies in which we work with, the city and, the sort. So I wouldn't say I'm opposed to it, it's just a matter of how is it you communicate all those other things that led into some of those cost increases. Now, put that one aside, you put the same thing out there on Vos or Sato or Hazeldale for that matter. Right. It's, again, there's going to be, people wonder, okay, so what did that, did that by property? What was that in conjunction with? And so I think we'd have to put some details somewhere in addition to it. I think one of the interesting facts is I was doing a little bit of research on Westview, and one of the things at Westview is we built Westview for about the same cost we're building our elementary schools. It's like,
35 million?
my goodness.
35
It's
million?
33 million.
Jeez. Good deal. Good bargain.
Great.
It was 98. Different environment.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
entirely
sometimes,
different environment. And so again, people
was
who don't
94.
understand construction
94.
going, why didn't you get that contractor? You know, you could have built one of these schools for $5 million. And again, people don't understand those things and so many other factors, but something we're thinking about, but I think we'd have to figure out a way, how do we capture the story behind it?
Right.
You could put up the fact that there are counties in Texas that spend $60 million on just a football.
On just-
You know what?
Football stadiums.
That should be prominent.
Well, yeah.
Displayed.
I think we'll take it under advisement. I think Claire could have some wisdom to this, and of course, telling the story. And
Yeah.
Tom, you thinking about like the end, like if we want to get more money for the next 30 schools we want to retrofit, like, 4 years from now, that would be good message at the end.
I'm just wondering what kinds of questions you as committee members hear from the community.
Even if you had a thermometer and you could show
Exactly.
where, here's the end, here's what was budgeted for this project, here's where we're at, and as we're going along, getting up to it, and then, like Carl said, I think if there was something that jumped out that was a bump in the road, you're able to drop down and do a drop down and being able to explain it.
Yeah.
And then the good news is that I think we're having some projects start to come in under. I mean, I know in the last year we've had some great news out there.
You have the benefit of tremendous experience, and those costly problems really are, to look at it another way, are they're great investments in the experience of the team, right? And so,
Well, when
Aaron and Sherry are really skilled now.
When the sheets were put together on the cost overruns initially, and they were nasty, that was the same time we started putting together the offset to those cost overruns, which was the bond premiums, interest, income, all of the other sources. So what was put to the public at the time, and I got asked questions about it all the time. We see it's over budget, but you picked up X million dollars here. Where did that come from? They didn't really understand what it all meant, but it was there, and they could read it.
I think that might be a good conversation for one of our next meetings to talk about reporting and maybe thinking about the next phase where we've got fewer projects going on. So how do we talk more about successes and lessons learned?
One thing I would caution in talking about putting the costs in context. Where do they come from?
Political.
Yeah, there's some political things that we need to keep in mind, because if Cheryl were here, I'm sure she would say, no, wait a minute, we didn't cause you to have, cost overruns.
Perspective is everything.
Yeah, school district just didn't do it well enough. And then you talk to Washington County and they say, no, we didn't hold, we weren't extorting you. They've heard me say it before. I think it would be important for us to be careful how we phrase those things.
Great. Yeah, I agree. But I think I'd say let's move on. We've got
For a future agenda, right?
a little bit of time left. Maureen, do you want to go over the communications?
It's pretty straightforward, as you can see, and it's all on your electronic file as well. But we've got a number of activities that happened since we saw you last in the summer. We have an upcoming VOS open house on Thursday, so if you'd like to go through that school. There are some subtle differences from school to school and how they're cited and what have you. Mountainside's dedication is on November 1st, and then the last thing is Sato's dedication open house will be a combo event here on November 16th. So I'll bring up the rear in terms of our public, welcomings and that type of thing. So yeah, it's been good.
Will Charlie have the kids sing
The raccoon song.
She's working on some fun things. So, and what's really nice too is we have the Sato family coming. Some of the relatives. So, son of the sons, and so it'll be really, I think, very touching. So we've worked on some, I think, gifts, because that's a tradition of gifts in Japanese culture, and so I think there'll be some lovely touches. So, yeah.
Great. Very nice.
Maureen, for the Mountainside Open House,
Yes.
just based on some recent conversations in the south part of the district, you might be ready for some vocal people about the arts people, the auditorium. There seems to be a huge uproar about they're not being able to use the auditorium, and they've got concerts at another site, and they've got a play that they don't know where they're going to have. And I'm just hearing angry people.
This is community
Yeah.
arts groups. Well, and I think Carl might have mentioned it, you might have mentioned it as well, as we're really keeping community use for the first year, so we get all the warranty.
Oh, no, I'm talking about for the students.
Oh.
It's the parents of the students saying the auditorium isn't done, and they aren't going to be able to have their first concert there, they aren't going to be able to have their first play there.
I was in it today, and they're still working on it. Yeah, it's just and I believe the principal there said that they hopefully expect it to be completed by December.
Yeah, that's what I heard just this morning. In fact, it was end of November is what they're being told. But there's 2 concerts and a play between now and then, something like that, or 2 plays and a concert, I don't know. But of course, they throw out school goes way over budget, and then it's not done, and we can't use it, and it's the holiday play, and on and on and on. And I'm just walking my dog. I'm just.
No, we hear you. We hear you. You know, people just love their school, and they want to be able to use all of it. So,
yes, yes, I do.
Right. Get rid of the T-shirt that says "Ask me."
Got rid of that a long time ago. I wear shirts that say Iowa. Oh, you're not from around here? Nope. Unfortunately, a lot of the local people in the South End seem to know me.
That's good. That's good. Good.
Right. Let's move on to our last official item. Item on the agenda.
That's right.
Sorry.
Okay, you all have this sheet here that says bond program reserve strategies, priorities for execution, and this is a discussion I talked to Brian about having with you as well. So as well know, we're healthy in the program here. We've got that $49 million reserve piece as well coming. Contingency's doing all right. And so we're healthy, and I know that we get to a point where there's a temptation to start using that money for other items as well. My sense at this point is we're too far away from the end of this bond program to touch that reserve, and we need to hold off on that until we get further along and we have our acquisition strategies down for the rest of the program. We've also had the market that's gone up on us appreciably as well. So, we're going to have some issues with that down the road as well. But I think it's smart for us to start a discussion about strategies that my staff can use to start putting together a plan for how we apply that and get your recommendations on how we would use that reserve program to move forward if indeed we come to a point where we have that surplus as well. So I put this sheet together with my staff and kind of into some large categories of work. We think that are within the strategy of the bond of what was put out there to the public. And so I wanted to put this out to the group, not necessarily to make decisions tonight, but to have you think about how you would like us to formulate and put projects together and come back to you with recommendations of how to move forward with that reserve dollars when we get to the point where we can start to use that. And I'll leave it there for discussion.
Along with all these great new schools we have, it's causing some equity questions from other schools. And there's not enough money to bring everybody up to a certain standards. And I can tell you, the list and the number of people that will be coming at us with projects will be far more than the reserve that we have. So would really count on our staff and then this committee to figure out some mechanism for prioritization of projects.
I'm guessing, I didn't look at the header, but I'm guessing everyone got the email from the Sunset group on the auditorium.
Yeah.
That was the first thing I thought of was, here comes the wave. That's the beginning of
There's
it.
three bathrooms.
Not yet.
Maybe you can tell them, Carl.
We anticipate in public testimony on Monday evening at the next board meeting, a request of about $1 million from Westview parents and staff for their restrooms and concessions to come from the bond contingency. And so you've got the Sunset High School Theater. We will have public testimony asking for that over at Westview. And the second this starts, it's going to start lining up. So the sooner, and sooner, not immediate today, but over the course of the next 3 to 4 months, where we become solid in saying these are where our standards will lie, and then we have to take a look at what the metrics will be. How do we actually make recommendations? How do you make recommendations to the board to say, okay, this is our recommendation of where these reserves should go? So.
Does the district have any sort of prioritization rubric in looking at capital projects that you apply right now?
No, I mean, there's just a language in the bond. I think that's in there that gives us guidance as well, but no specific one. You can tell from my druthers, and I made this sheet, right? So I gave you a little steering up for my point is that I think our money is best spent in improvements of what we have, not growing what we have as well.
The other thing we have, the other tool that we have is the actual work of the committee, the community involvement bond committee. We drew that line, right? And there were projects underneath it that had already been kind of prioritized, but just we didn't have enough funds to go with this package.
I've got all of those notes and all of those graphs and all the reasons why and why we did.
Yeah.
So my question would be that there's always a backdoor to any type of fiscal program, the funding, whether you get arbitrage, I don't know if we do that anymore, but, at some point you have to spend that money. So have we laid that out in the fact that what is the backdoor, that the money all has to be spent? Or is that an unlimited period of time?
I would say that
The time frame that has to be spent.
the time frame it should be spent by the time this bond comes to a close.
Okay.
Within that 4 years.
Although I believe the life of the money goes beyond the bond.
Yeah,
It does.
that's right.
It does.
There's a carryover from the previous
Right.
bond to this one.
Right.
There was.
When you sell
That is
bonds, you have to have a reasonable expectation that the money will be spent within 3 years.
Correct.
But reasonable at the time.
Right,
So-
but I think that's a political issue, and then there's a technical issue. And so you have to lay out a calendar or a schedule and say, this is our commitment to spending the money. And then you back it up going through, okay, if you're going to do a big job, you better get going. If you're just going to remodel, so maybe that's what we're asking the team to do, is to project what is our finished date on expenditure of cash, and then come up with programs that can fit within that remaining window, and then prioritize. Because if there's a big long project in there, I don't know what that means.
Well, I think, our recommendation last year to the school board was don't start spending the money yet, but that we start working on it. So I think what staff is asking us is help them develop that program.
I agree
Start
with
with
that.
the criteria.
But I'm being a project manager which says you gotta be done. So that's all I'm saying is that you can't make a decision in a box, because if you do make the wrong choice and you run out of money, then you have to have both constraints. But the constraint of prioritizing and doing it is also based on schedule. So that's all I'm seeking.
Carl, I think that's a very valid point, in that we will also be going out for another bond.
Right.
So the next 3.5 years, gear up, because we're going to have another massive committee of going forward with another bond for our community. And so to have a plan to see the current bond expended, I don't know what that timeline may be. It may be 6 months to a year. Do we have that viability with our voters? But we don't. I personally don't think it's the best idea for us to have a large pot of funds in 4 years' time that have not been spent. So developing that plan, and this is going to help us at the front end of that. Certainly developing a timeline, but I think it's kind of the scale and where the priorities land will help us.
So
my intent would be to have a plan which obligates all the money by the end of the bond period as well. Not necessarily expended, but it's obligated into contracts and have that planned out far enough in advance.
And I think that needs to be shared with everyone so they can see what the availability or the time.
That makes sense.
Right. So I think maybe take this list away, think about it, and that maybe is our other major agenda topic for the next meeting is, going through, do we have any questions to this? And then thinking about metrics and I think probably maybe on the staff side, we need to think about kind of what's the intake process, because you don't want a process where the first people who ask, get at the head of the line. So, and how do we incorporate the projects that were below the line on the bond list? But I think we can help them think about how these priorities work and then how we measure, how we evaluate, because somebody's going to have that undesirable job of, ranking all of these.
And then I think both Paul and Carl talked about really maybe, and this is the staff at least presenting to you or working with you, what are certain standards for the district that we all agree upon? Every school should this should be a standard for all schools. And what are those? Whether it's around health and safety or what are those? And try to come up with that criteria.
That's
the 60, yeah. And
that's really.
Because now all we hear from, if you're not at Mountainside High School, you can hear everything. Every time they walk in there, well, we want this, whether it's the theater, the football stadium,
Air conditioning,
the restrooms, the air conditioning, there's no way to give it all to them.
So does that sound like a good approach?
Does.
Everybody? Okay. I want to respect your time. We do not see any members of the public here, but probably should put it on record that we had the opportunity for public comment. And we need to give a report to the school board. I think they asked for reports quarterly. So what I propose is, since we are in a thankfully kind of drama-free moment in the program, I can draft something up and send it out by email to the committee. And then if that is acceptable to people, I can present it to the school board.
Brian, is that something we would aim for by next Monday, or is that something you'd want to know members' agenda?
What would your preference be?
Doesn't matter. I mean, we want to give this committee time to be able to review. I mean, we were talking, because it needs to be to Mary by noon on Wednesday, and that would be a bit of a rush.
Yeah, so maybe the first meeting in November?
Yep.
Yeah, of course. Okay, we'll plan accordingly.
Okay.
Anything else for the record?
Next meeting, would you like to see another school?
Mountainside.
Where do you want to go, Eric?
Mountainside.
Yeah.
Gotta show the new people the dollars how to spend.
You can go look at the auditorium so you can answer those questions.
Yes. No, that'd be fun actually.
So it looks like it's November 29th. Let us check, make sure that there's not an event, and we'll be in touch.
Okay, great. Thank you all very much for